On today's Minute of the Apes, no pets on the couch.
Exercise with an ape maker, human down. Then talks. Levity is of the divine bound. We are determined to know what the apes want, war or peace.
And if it is man's destiny one day to be dominated, then, oh, please, God, let him be dominated by such as you.
Hello and welcome to Minute of the Apes, a daily podcast where we break down every minute of the Planet of the Apes movies, 1 minute at a time. I'm Todd. That's Sean that's breathing.
Yep.
You, sir, are Richard.
I'm breathing too.
At least that's what Chris told me. He told me you were Richard.
He did. That's what he knows.
That's all. Is that all he knows?
He did. That's what he knows. I'm his first family.
Oh, that was so sweet.
Very sweet.
Yeah.
All right, we are on to Minute 19. It is Thursday. Sean, tell us what's going on with Minute 19.
Start Minute 19 with the governor saying, Senor Armando.
Governor.
And ends with the governor saying that we're waiting for an ape with enough intelligence, ...
We're waiting for an ape. Let's listen to this minute of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes.
Senor Armando, let me remind you of the seriousness of our problem. Now, your circus travels mainly in the provinces, does it not? Yes, sir. Then undoubtedly you are unaware of the rising tide of disobedience, of outright defiance among the servant apes in our cities.
Mr. Governor, on investigation, many of the reported offenses have been proved minor.
That ape who was killed while trying to escape from the city last night, would you call his offense minor, Mr. McDonald?
No, sir, I would not.
He physically assaulted his own master.
But only after what must have been severe provocation. The ape's entire body was covered with a series of welts and bruises inflicted by a beating.
Which he no doubt richly deserved. Now many more of them out there are just like that ape. Oh, burning with resentment. Or waiting for an ape with enough intelligence.
As Minute 19, we have a courtyard's worth of gorillas, chimpanzees, and orangutans, Milo/Caesar, who I'm now going to start calling Caesar, and a planet's worth of humans.
I long for these scenes that play over minutes, but this one just feels like it's playing for no reason to play.
What do you mean? Like, how so? So
I think because kind of what we were saying before that and look, you proved me wrong when I complained about Caesar's moment of bitching out about the humans being an evolution and opening of his character's door. I don't feel that these moments, while I do think that they provide contextual information, they don't further the story so much.
We are establishing Breck as a villain.
Okay.
So
Do we need to have a
fine,
Brexit?
Sure. No, I mean, that's what I feel like we're doing. We're establishing Breck as a villain. And this paranoia that Breck has was not helped by the chairman's video. Yeah. I need more of Breck's paranoia about what's happening.
Maybe we're...
What we do
Did he lose a parent to the apes? And
that actually be kind of interesting.
Or that's why he hates them so?
So go ahead.
No, I'm just trying to think. Like, I lost my parents when their service dog died or something like that during the Great Flu.
So Breck says, then you are unaware of the rising tide of disobedience, of downright defiance among servant apes in our cities. And yes, we are too. Mm-hmm. I had no idea that there was disobedience in the cities and defiance among the apes and the servant apes in our cities.
See, like, that is information that we need. That's something new. Yeah. Like, what is this servant ape starting to resist on their own meaning? I mean,
but the funny thing is those are thrown in that scene where it's almost because you're so focused on the story that you know, we're almost latching onto it, that when those comments are made, I found myself going, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
So
they're so out of the blue.
Do you remember I mentioned there was a scene that was supposed to open the film? Mm-hmm. And the scene was an ape.
That's right.
That was fleeing.
Mm-hmm.
and is shot dead by a police officer. And the police officer discovers that the ape was so horribly abused that may have been why he was escaping. McDonald even references it in this minute, and that Breck brings it back. McDonald says the governor on investigation, many of the reported offenses have proved to be minor. And Breck says the ape that was killed while trying to escape from the city last night, would you call that a minor offense, Mr. McDonald? No, I would not. Breck, he was physically insulted by his own master. McDonald, only after what must have been extreme provocation, the ape's entire body was a mass of scars or welts inflicted. They're referencing an entire scene that we did not see. This whole moment was supposed to play out at the beginning, where we get the sense of an ape uprising. We get the sense of the brutality of the masters, and the ape is trying to escape the brutality. This is now being referenced in this moment of an ape uprising. Breck is trying to quell something that is happening of the brutality of the masters to their servants, and we never saw that, but we're being thrown into it. This is why I guess Breck is now paranoid.
You know, how nice would it have been to have that opening scene? You could even the chasing down of that ape could have. There are ways you could have made that visually call back to the chasing of Taylor and the other astronauts through the cornfields
or whatever,
so that you're echoing those things again. I mean, you look at the new movies, how many times in those are there echoes of the movies that have happened before and very, very nicely tied in. If we had that, this scene does play entirely different. I never thought about that. When I'm watching it, and I kept thinking, like, where the fuck is this coming from? That does make sense. And I get why they probably took it as. It probably slowed the movie down immediately. You know, it was information they didn't feel it was necessary.
The minute of the Apple commercial that happens with the apes and all the different costumes.
Right.
So we're painting a reality now where we've got a labor force that's upset because apes are taking their jobs. We've got abusive masters to apes. We've got a paranoia about talking apes leading an uprising. I mean, those are the three elements that I'm getting at this particular point.
And then you got the governor holding some weird half Pokemon ball thing in his hand.
Is he really?
Yeah,
I need to go
it's
back
a strange thing.
So,
isn't everything Pokemon
what I'm missing
weird?
is what connects those together.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that scene at the beginning would have helped. But if at this point I were the governor, I'd be like, well, let's just go back to labor forces. I wouldn't worry about what the apes uprising are. I need something that bonds me to people needing those apes.
I felt that some of the people in this scene are a bit too sycophantic towards him. McDonald is the only voice of dissent. There should be people that understand. Now, they could all be suck-ups to him, but still, if they were contrary to it, you begin to work in different opinions and different ideas that then expose things he's thinking and things like that's kind of where this scene fails for me as I'm watching it. It's just that all the other people you've mentioned are too right in line with him and just giving him information like that he needs to back up his things. And maybe that's why we don't ever get him taking the thought further that makes it, why is he that way? Where is this coming from? I know I'm just thinking out loud, but again, it was just
Apes killed my parents.
But we do need the scene at the beginning to make him worry about ape uprising.
Right.
We do need that moment to kind of make that happen. I mean, Brett gets up. He walks around. He's kind of continuing his spot. He walks over and grabs water, which is kind of what you do when you're trying to actually have a scene. McDonald's still the voice of reason for this moment. Armando is still in the scene for I don't know why.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. At this point...
Well, because they're not going to let him go. That's why.
But I don't know why he's talking to Armando about all this.
I don't know why I didn't have Armando removed from the room long ago.
Right. This is an internal conversation that's happening with his two agents.
Right.
And his, number one.
Right.
That's kind of the voice
Which he
of
doesn't
reason.
really seem to like his number one.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah, McDonald
doesn't have any reason other than being sane.
Right.
Maybe, the governor goes by the maxim where, you surround yourself with people that are smarter than you and will tell you no and stuff like that.
Well, McDonald should make him feel like an imbecile.
Yeah.
I mean, this should have been a moment where Breck is bringing in the master of the ape that was beaten. And he's siding with the master while McDonald is the voice of reason. Like, this should have been like a small trial moment almost.
Right.
Or a conversation happening in chambers. Maybe that scene should have, preceded Armando being brought in.
Right.
So we now know why Breck is paranoid about talking apes.
Right.
Like, that might have been a nice moment. Like, we're going to get the governor's actually talking to somebody that actually had a murdered ape. Mm-hmm. There might have been uprising. The governor's following the train and believing the master while McDonald's sowing doubt.
Yeah.
And then Armando gets brought in as the next case. And suddenly Breck is now paranoid about what's happening.
Right.
Because he just had this potential ape uprising, and Armando's just the next case. I don't know.
My next note was, okay, can someone take the scene out of the governor's mouth? He's chewing on it so hard he might choke. But it says, he so richly deserved a beating.
Well, he is very almost silent screen era villain. If he just had that mustache to twirl.
Yeah.
It is the first complete stop-down scene. We can look at other scenes that had elements that were missing. This is the first stop-down scene for me that, as I watched, I'm like, okay. Again, this isn't giving me anything drastically new that moves things along. But it does, set that table that we now understand the context of whether he's explained or not. They have introduced the idea that they're worried about it,
and we've put two things in play. We've created a hash line with Breck.
Yep,
and created a Dixon with McDonald.
Okay,
I'd see that.
We're establishing McDonald as Breck's good angel on his shoulder.
Yeah,
we've established Dixon or McDonald as potentially the Dixon.
Right.
I'm going to advocate for the apes in this scenario.
And how brave is it for a film of this era to put McDonald in that position of being the reasonable one
and being African American
and being African American?
I mean,
it's very brave for that
era.
era.
1972. It's not like modern era where you're
right.
just expect it to be kind of progressive in terms of what it does. This is shocking, and he's doing exactly what he should do. I mean, the character is great.
Well, and I think that pays off as the film goes along, him being African American with all the visual ideas and the things that are exposed to how they're trying to parallel the race issues that were going on at that time. Putting McDonald there, I think it pays off for them beautifully as they continue to move along.
It is fascinating for this film in 1972 to move past that and actually integrate their black actors into the film in terms of being a part of society, and nobody questions that.
Right.
And now it becomes about the apes themselves.
Right.
Whereas in 1972, it would have been about race from the beginning. And now we are telling the same story. We've just elevated our characters a little forward. And we see that in modern storytelling. We've moved forward in terms of what it means to be gay in films, or what it means to be non-binary or transgendered or race or class.
Right.
And we're seeing writers elevate those characters to pure status in terms of who they are, while still telling stories about race and gender and so on.
Right.
Sorry, random.
No, it's good. It's very thought-provoking. I love that they were pushing. I love that Dane has the mind where I'm sure he was influential in who that is he described as a what they would have called a black male in the script when they described McDonald.
Well, yeah, it said Negro.
That's right. You did say Negro.
Dressed Negro.
Yeah.
So he's calling. Now, of course, that's not. He may not have been the one that just came up with it. Pre-pro conversations, they may have said, "I think this is a good idea." So it could have been from the director and he together, and he's just making the script notation of that. But still, to put it in there,
we go back to this moment. The fact that we have McDonald here, and you kind of wonder sometimes if some of these actors themselves weren't also having issue with the fact that this black actor was elevated to this moment. I mean, we had the first kiss between interracial kiss on Star Trek just a year earlier,
right?
And you think about how shocking that was for that moment. Right. I don't think about it as much now.
No, we don't think about it. I tell my kid all the time where she's like, the way y'all gays, but she's like, but y'all called them these words and these words. I'm like, but at that time, that was where the mind was, and so your shock was in another place. And now you look at it as though we're horribly outdated, when the truth was many of us were ahead of the curve at the time, and that curve just always changes.
But you bring it up now. You bring it up specifically about McDonald in this moment, and for me, I'm not even thinking about his role in this scene in terms of what it means in 1972 and what it meant for her to be a main cast member on a show as a black actor, and what a standout that was for 1971, and that she had an interracial kiss with Captain Kirk.
The lead heroic white character.
McDonald in this moment is huge.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily translate today as much as we
Right.
would have imagined at this moment.
Well, I mean, that's because
even for the actors on set.
well, yeah,
Right.
it's just like somebody who watches Citizen Kane right now for the first time goes, okay, yeah, I've seen all this stuff before, because we've seen all this stuff before, but it's